Welcome to Women Who Work. The word work is defined as doing something to an exceedingly excellent capacity. On this show, we will have insightful and candid conversations with women who are doing exceedingly excellent in a variety of capacities. These women work. On today's show, we have the pleasure of talking with newly elected Erie City Councilwoman Sonya Arrington. Councilwoman Arrington has notably made strides in the war against violence, particularly teen violence, by founding the Mothers Against Teen Violence organization, which has garnered enormous community and private support over the last few years. MATV has extended its reach into becoming an organization which addresses not only the effects of teen violence, but has been highly proactive in the prevention and reduction of teen violence, recidivism among teen offenders, and has formed partnerships with local and state law enforcement agencies to address issues such as truancy, mentoring, parenting, life skill classes, and job readiness programs, just to name a few. We are honored to welcome Councilwoman Arrington to kick off our Women's Work series. Hi, Sonya Arrington. How are you?
I'm good.
Glad to have you.
Well, thank you.
I know that we've shared a lot, and you've shared a lot about your story in the public, but we just want to know how were you inspired to start MATV, and did you envision the organization growing into what it actually is today?
Well, I was inspired by the death of my son, January 5th, 2010. As he was exiting a convenience store, he was shot 5 times and killed. And I wanted to be somebody who took a negative and turned it into a positive, because my son's death wasn't in vain. So after the loss of my son, I just sat back and I started analyzing all the murders that had been going on in the Erie community, even before I lost my son. And I said to myself, what can I do to try to help combat this problem? So I just got to thinking, and I came up with MATV, Mothers Against Teen Violence, because after losing a son to violence, I said, I don't want to lose any more of my children, and I don't want any other parents to lose any of their children. So in March of 2010, I formed MATV, which is a nonprofit organization, and I just want to be an example for not just only parents, but the youth too, on how you can take a negative and turn it into a positive. You know, everything happened for a reason. And the reason I might have lost my son is to get me to stand up and do what I'm doing now. You know, so I work with at-risk youth, and I've been working with them since I lost my son. And I really love what I'm doing. I said coming in the door, if I just save one life, I've done what I set out to do.
Great, and I'm glad that you were able to take something that was so tragic, because I couldn't imagine, being a mother of 2 young boys, that something like that happening. And you have made, great strides, as we said in the intro, great strides in our community, and have been an example. And it's been a program that has worked because you are genuine and because people believe in your message and what you're doing. Did you envision the success that MATV currently has when you started it?
No, I didn't. If I think back, it's been a little over 6 years since I lost my son. And I was just thinking about this last week. Never in a million years did I think I would be where I am today, especially city council. When someone first approached me and asked me what I want from city council, I laughed. I'm like, are you kidding? And he was like, no, I'm not kidding. He said, you already have a platform. The community loves you, and you love the community, so I think this would be a great job for you. And I was like, nah. He said, well, do me a favor and think about it. So I went home and I spoke to my husband, and he said, I think you should do it too. So after he gave me the go-ahead, I did it, and here I am today, a councilwoman.
We're glad, and congratulations too.
Well,
I know I've said it before, but publicly we do congratulate you,
thank you
for
very
that.
much.
Since you've been working in this, could you tell us, what would you say is one or more of the contributing factors that leads to deviant behavior among our teens?
Well, we have quite a few issues, but I think right now, especially in the inner city, the biggest issue is the single parent home. You have mothers trying to raise men. How can a mother tell a man how he's supposed to be or what he's supposed to do? And even with the kids that I work with in my mentoring program, these young men are 6 foot tall, and I could just imagine their mother saying, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. I'm talking about 16-year-olds that tall. you know. And so I think that missing parent is one of the factors, and the greatest factor is poverty. You know, we're living in poverty. There's no hope in the inner city, you know, and it's sad. It's really sad. You know, I'm one that really think about, you know, if we keep them busy, we'll keep them out of trouble. You know, that's why I have job fairs and do the things that I do to try to help kids get jobs, because they need hope. You know, and when you talk about poverty, if you give these kids a job, they can help the household. We want to bring these families out of poverty. So if you help the child, you help the family. You know, like with the summer jams program. You know, and another reason why I'm so glad that I'm on city council is because I was really upset when city council didn't contribute to giving money to help get more kids jobs last summer. So, you know, now that I'm on city council, hopefully this year it'll be different. The city will participate in helping get kids, because these are our kids. If you have the county out here giving us money for city kids, I mean, like, come on. You know, that's a no-brainer. So whatever I can do to help the youth, that's what I'm here for.
And I'm glad that you brought up your involvement with City Council, because that takes us into our next question. It's a great segue. As a City Councilwoman, I know you talked about with the Summer Jobs Program, but how else do you further engage the community to be involved and taking an active role? And beyond that, what do you wish that the community would do to further help and support programs such as yours and other programs that are mentoring our youth and giving them something constructive and positive to do?
First of all, we need to come together as a community. We are so divided in the Erie community, it's not even funny. You know, I mean, when I think of the Erie community, the first thought that comes to my mind is public safety, because we have a big issue with you know, shootings, shooting into houses. I mean, robbing, stealing. It's sad, you know, but we are supposed to be examples for our children. We are supposed to be role models for our children. Our children don't have a lot of role models. And you know, hopefully sooner or later we'll all get it that we need to come together to give our kids hope, you know, and to give the Erie community hope. You know, my stand for city council, my biggest thing is with city council, I'm for the people. I'm for the community. If it works for the people, if it works for the community, it works for me and my family, because I'm part of that community. And whatever affects the community, it affects me and my family too. So naturally, I'm a voice for the people. If the people want it, you got a lot of people that want it, then I think this is something that we need to do, because we're a voice for the people. That's what Erie City Council is for.
Right, and we do have to, I agree with you, we do have to make the community at large know that, you know, we are all connected. You know, what affects one affects us all. So
Definitely.
I do like what you said, and hopefully that will help us now that you are a voice that is definitely making that message heard more. I'm switching gears a little bit. Iyanla Vanzant, which many people are familiar with, made a statement a while back in regards to a mistake that parents of African American boys make, particularly single mothers. And she said, we don't focus on what we want our sons to be, rather than affirming them what we want them to be. So we just kind of tell them, you know, we don't want you to be out in the streets. We don't want you to be a drug dealer. We don't want you to do A, B, and C, or D, instead of telling them, you know, we want you to be a doctor. We want you to be a lawyer. We want you to be something positive. Do you agree with this statement? And is that a piece of advice that you could give to some of our single mothers and parents out there?
Not totally, you know, because children are a product of their environment. You know, I'm going to take myself. I grew up in Bird Drive projects, 13 years of my life, you know, and by coming from the project, especially a lot of the things that's going on in our community, it used to be coming from the public housing, I'm going to say, public housing areas. And I grew up in public housing. I lived out there for 13 years. At the age of 17 years, my mom moved us out to Mill Creek, which was really a big change, you know. And after me and my husband got married, which he was my high school sweetheart, we got married. Our first place was public housing. We moved into public housing. We raised 3 wonderful children. When my son lost his life, he was 19 years of age. Now, we're helping to raise our grandchildren, you know, and you really don't have to be a product of where you come from. You know, even back then, when I was in public housing growing up, I never thought that I would be where I am today. You know, we have to instill good values into our children. You know, you have to talk to your children. You know, you need to know who your children are hanging out with, what they're doing. Even at the age of 19, before my son died, this was 2 weeks before my son died, me and my son had a conversation, and my husband, we had a conversation. My son was 19 years old. He graduated. He worked at Best Buy on the Geek Squad, and he would come in the house all time of the night. So 2 weeks before he died, we said, hey, we need to talk to you when he got off work. And he said, well, what for? And we sat him down. We said, look, we know you're 19. We know you graduated from school, but you can't come in our house after 1 a.m. in the morning. He was like, are you serious? I mean, he literally got upset with us. And I'm like, yeah. And I said, it's about respect. Respect us. You know, I said, you got it good. You're not paying any bills. Whatever money you get, we let you keep the money so you can get ahead, take care of your car. And at the time, he had a little girl. He has a little girl, which is 6 years old now. He was paying child support for her. So I said, the only thing we ask you to do is just respect the time. So he was kind of upset for a couple of days. And then about 3 days later, he called me and he said, you know what, Mom, I get it. He said, I get it. I said, because if you say you grown and you think you grown, then you don't need to be here. If you want to do what you need to do, you need to get your own place. So that gave him something to think about, because financially, even though he had a little job, he wasn't ready to go out on his own. So what he did was, both of my daughters were grown and they were out on their own. So anytime he couldn't make it in the house by 1 o'clock, he would call me and say, hey, Mom, I won't be home. I'm going to stay over at Lisa's house, which is my daughter, his sister. And that's what he would do. And then after 8 a.m. in the morning, that's when he came in our house, because that's when my alarm went off and he was able to come in the house. And it wasn't because he was a baby. It was about respect. And it took him a minute to get it, but he got it, you know. So, I mean, nowadays, we give our children choices. That's the problem, especially when they're minors. Don't give these kids choices. I'm going to use church as an example. I was born and raised in church. That's why I still go to church. And when I was young, I used to try to play like I was sick, because I used to love to play basketball. And I would tell my mother on Sunday morning, she would make all 4 of us get up and go to church. I'm like, Mom, I'm sick. She says, well, okay, if you're sick, remember, you're sick all day. So meaning when they came home from church, I couldn't go outside. So I got well really quick, you know. And nowadays, people give their kids choice. Do you want to go to church? No, you don't have a choice. How old are you? Let's go to church, because we need to instill that in them right now. And I think one of the other problems in our community, the spiritual link is missing. You know, it really is. If you really go, you know, go through the community, go through the churches, that spiritual link is really missing. Even like with my grandkids now, hey, they know I go to church almost every Sunday unless I got something to do. Now they call me, Nana, can I go to church with you? You sure can. You know, so we need to instill values into our children. We need to clean up our own house before we try to tell other people to clean up theirs.
And that's great advice, like you said, too. Make sure that there's respect, that we're instilling values in our kids. And we're going to come back, because we're going to come back on this question, because there's a few more things I want to add on that you spoke about, which are important. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after this.
Before NAMI, I did not have many support systems. I felt very alone. Through NAMI, I earned a support system, I earned advocacy, I earned an organization that I could refer others to and advocate for mental illness with. And through NAMI, I feel that I can help stamp out stigma.
NAMI of Erie County. Find help, find hope.
We're back with City Councilwoman Sonya Arrington, and we were just discussing some things about MATV and even just about single families raising young men, particularly African American men, and what she's doing to help and what the community needs to do. And one of the things that you talked about was mentorship. And I know that MATV does have a mentorship program, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that because if there is a missing parent in the home, it's important to have someone that our children can look to. And so can you talk about the program just in case there's someone that's watching that may be interested and needs your services?
I have a mentoring program. It's called LEAD. It stands for Leadership, Empowerment, Accountability, and Diversity. The kids that I have in my program, they are at-risk youth. 80% of them are at-risk youth. The other 20%, I opened up for parents who see their child heading down the wrong direction and they want to catch them before they continue to go down that wrong path. I have the judges send me kids to district justice. They, my kids are, it's like minor offenses, truancy, disorderly conduct, fighting, little simple things like that they'll send them to me for. And as an incentive for completing my program, they get their fines and fees waived and they get credit for their community service hours. And in order to get into my program, you have to do three things. In order to complete my mentoring program, to get credit and get your fees waived, you have to show up, you have to participate, and you have to give Miss Sonya a hug coming in and going out. Because a lot of these kids don't get that at home. And believe me, I've been doing my program for almost 4 years now. And in the 4 years that I've been doing my program, I had young men that said, look, I don't even hug my mother. And I said, well, look, I'm not your mother. And if you want to complete my program, you need to give me that hug. And this one young man like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, So after we went back and forth for a couple minutes, he gave me a hug. And the good thing about that is the next day, I didn't have to ask him for a hug because he already knew. And that's just me. I'm a hugger, not just with kids, with anybody. And, especially with our at-risk youth, they need that infection. They need that TLC. They need to know that there are other people out here besides your parents and your family who care about you. And that's what my LEAD program does. My kids in my LEAD program, I go to court with them. If there's an issue in school, the parents don't have to get off of work. I'll go see about them in school. A lot of my kids that I work with now, they call me before they call their parents. My program is only 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, but I'm on call 7 days a week. My kids call me 2 o'clock in the morning because they have issues going on and they just need to talk, and that's fine with me. I'd rather for them to call me when they got something going on and go out and do something crazy that they're going to regret. 4 of my kids have been with me for almost 4 years. When they started in my program, they started for truancy, and a couple of them started for fighting. They started out with only having to do 25 hours of community service. And almost 4 years later, they're still in my program. Actually, they're 19, 3 of them 19, 1 is going on 21, and I'm like, whoa, because my program is 10 to 19 if they're in school. So I said, well, it's about time for y'all to start graduating. Oh no, Miss Sonya, we're going to stay here. And that's fine with me, because if it keep them on that right track, that's what I want to do. And 2 of the young people that's been with me all that time, they are now, as of 3 or 4 months ago, they are now youth mentors. That is an incentive for staying in the program all these years. They get paid minimum wage to be youth mentors, because I look at it like this. Who better than another young person to say, look, for my 10, 11-year-olds coming in to look and say, look, I've been where you are. Now look at me. I hung in there. I did what I had to do. And now I'm a youth mentor. I'm telling you, these kids went from truancy to bad report cards to going to school every day. And 3 of them graduated with honors.
Wow.
They graduated with honors. And I am so proud of these kids. And when I look at the young men and the young women that I work with every day, I see my sons and my daughters. And I wouldn't say anything to them that I wouldn't say to my own kids. I truly love these kids, and sometimes a lot of people say, well, you too nice. No, I'm not too nice. I said, people need to understand that these kids go through a lot of different issues, not just at home, but in school, in their neighborhood, and they really don't have anybody to talk to. but they always know, regardless what it is, they can always come and talk to me. And that's why I have the relationship that I have with my kids. Even kids from 4 and 5 years ago who went on, who's doing well, they'll come to the Booker T just to see me and say hi. Hey, give me a hug and say, hey, I'm doing good, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And that's what I like to hear. They're keeping in touch.
That's great. I'm glad we got a chance to touch on that. And the hug part is awesome. I know we do it at our church. Because there's some adults that need hugs,
Oh,
honestly.
definitely.
And sometimes they don't get them, and it does make a world of difference. And so I'm glad you were able to speak on that. With that in mind, there's a lot of conversation that we're hearing in the media and just in, on social media and circles that talks about the African American male becoming an endangered species. Whether we're talking about the disproportionate amount of males in the criminal justice system or the ones that have been birthed into circumstantial situations of poverty, or the ones that have been subject to the unfortunate injustice with the likes of Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, and countless others, it's hard to ignore that we have a problem. What do you say to this, and what are some of your current initiatives beyond your LEAD program that you have in place or are thinking about putting in place for the Erie community to ensure that our young men survive?
Well, personally, coming from me, my thought is, the reason why a lot of our young men go out and do the things that they do is the lack of hope. We got to give these young men hope for the future, and they don't have that. Like we talked about earlier, they're living in poverty. They see that they're staying in public housing. They see that their mother is struggling, to pay the light, the gas, and as a young male, you hate to see your parent struggle like that. So a lot of them think that the quickest and the easiest way to get money is to go stand out on the street corner and sell drugs. And that's sad. And they shouldn't have to do that. We need to train our children, give them soft skills on how to get jobs, because at the age of 15, they can start working. Hey, I'm going to tell you, all 3 of my kids at the age of 15, when they turned 15, I went to the school district, got that green card, and I put them to work. Even, me and my husband, we own rental properties. And my kids would come to us when they were growing up, well, Mom and Dad, can we get this? Can we get that? We would say, you can work for it. We used to put them in work in our houses, painting, cutting grass, doing things, because you know why? Because I knew, and my husband knew, when they grew up to be adults, as they are now, that when they got in the real world, it wasn't going to be easy. And nobody was going to hand you anything. You have to work for it. So if me and my husband didn't install anything else into our children, we installed the work ethic, because they all started working at the age of 15, and my girls still continue to work. My oldest daughter is a manager at a group home, So they both got decent jobs, and they're single parents, and they're doing an awesome job, So we have to install that hope piece in our young men to let them know, look, we're going to do what we need to do as a community to help you better yourself.
Great. I'm sticking kind of with that question. There's a lot of backlash that ask, where is the African American community and why are we not accepting responsibility for their own? Can you speak to this question and hopefully give a pep talk or a charge to our community as it pertains to this matter?
Well, one thing that I always say, because I do a lot of public speaking, and I was the first one to come out and say it, 99.9% of the homicide and the violence in the Erie community is black on black. And it's sad. We get mad when they vice versa, they turn it around. When it's white on black, we get mad about that. But what about the black on black? Like you say, all lives matter. We have to stand, these are our children, okay? We have to come together as a community and say, hey, you know what? Enough is enough. We're tired of losing our own children. They're killing each other off like flies, and it's really sad. There has to be something that we can do as a community, and I really think if we show these young men that we can come together as a community, and that will show them that if we can come together as adults, then they should be able to come together as youth, and whatever little problems they having, they should be able to talk about it and be done with it. Young men are losing their lives over little simple petty stuff. And the sad thing, and I need to talk about this, the saddest thing is, and you know, it took me a while to understand this. I'm gonna say about 2 years after I lost my son, because when I lost my son, I was hurting. You know, I grieved publicly from day one after I lost my son, and not until I went to Cambridge Springs prison to speak to a group of women there did I understand this. One lady asked me, she said, well, how do you feel about the young man and his family that shot your son? I was angry at the young man and his family. I didn't even want to talk to his, well, the reason why I was angry at his family, because when we went to trial, they tried to crucify my son, make my son out of somebody that he wasn't. You know, they tried to tell lies to get their family member off on the charges. And that just angered me. And when I went to Cambridge Spring, you know, the one lady said she was in there for life. She had been in there for 30 years. She had committed a murder when she was 19, and she was then, this was about four years ago, she was then 39 years old. And she said, well, you know, Mrs. Arrington, she said, what about how we feel? And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, until you came to speak to us today, she said, I never thought about how the victim's parents feel. She said, you gave me something to think about. She said, never in a million years, all these years I've been in jail, I never picked up the phone and called or even try to reach out to the person that I murdered, their family, and tell them, look, I'm sorry. She said, I didn't. Not until you came and spoke to us today and told us how you felt as the mother of a victim. And she said, but can you please do one thing for me? And I said, what's that? She said, can you please try to forgive the young man that shot and killed your son? And I looked at her and I said, I'm going to tell you this. I said, God hasn't put it on my heart yet, but as soon as he do, I will. So as I'm driving back to Erie after that, something came over me. Said, you know what? She's right. Because in order for me to go out and do what I do and tell these kids, look, y'all need to forgive, y'all need to forget, I need to do it. So from that day on, I forgave his family. I even forgive him. It's only one thing that I really want to do. I want to get a chance to talk to this young man and ask him why. Why did you do that to my son? I have questions. It's been 6 years. I haven't heard anything from him. And he's getting ready to come up for probation in probably about 3 or 4 years, because he got 10 to 20 years, you know, and I wasn't happy with what he got for murdering my son. You know, nowadays, you murder somebody, you get 2, 5, 10 years. But if you go to jail on a drug charge, they give you life. They give you 30, 40 years. Something is wrong here. Something is really wrong. That's a nonviolent crime. And to me, the people out there that buy drugs, you have a choice whether you want to buy it or not. But when you take somebody's life, you don't give anybody a choice. But I learned that my family and myself aren't the only people that's hurt by it. 2 lives were lost that day. My son died. My son and that young man's life, because he got to do at least 20 years in jail. You know, and I hope when he come out with a different mindset. You know, he at least try to make amends. You don't even have to say anything to me, but go in the community and try to make amends for what you did. So we really need to think about that. And I know there's a lot of parents out there who's hurting over the loss of their children, but please remember, there's 2 lives lost. It took me a while to get it, but I got it. You know, especially when I put myself in a position that I am, a mentor, to sit and try to talk to the kids that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Hey, if you preach it, then you got to be doing it yourself. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. I want to thank you so much for coming on today, because I know that you had to arrange your schedule with your lead program and all that, and you are doing excellent work. I can't stress that enough. some of the stuff I didn't even know. We didn't even get a chance to talk about all of your accolades and awards and so many things that you've been recognized for, but I thank you for everything that you've done. And you brought up a good point where you talked about the lives that are lost and the families and the victims and things that are affected through this. And is there anything else that you want to say in closing that you would want to say directly, to our viewers, to any of the children that may be watching, or just anybody that is dealing with this subject? Is something that you want to leave as last words to anyone?
Yes. To our viewers, these are not bad youth out here. They just misunderstood. You really need to think about, they must be going through something to do the things that they're doing. And I think it's up to us as adults to try to figure out what these problems are. These kids are really having problems. We need to come together as a community, because the Erie community is more divided now than it was 6 years ago when I lost my son. And I'm gonna tell you, I work hard every day trying to do what I do, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people out there. We're all trying to do the same thing, but we need to come together. Right now, we all in our separate corners, and we're not helping our community by standing in our separate corners. We need to come together. If not for us, for our youth. We say that our youth is our future. We need to invest in our future generation. So we definitely, if we want to bring back the love and peace and hope to the Erie community, we must come together as a community.
Thank you. And then how can people reach you? MATV, as you mentioned, is a nonprofit organization. Can you tell us where you're located? How people can get in touch with you?
My office is located at the Booker T. Washington Center. My cell phone number is 814-572-9567. I can be reached on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but the best place to get me is at the Booker T. Washington Center, because that's where my office is and where I run my program at.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you again. I can't even say, I feel like I'm saying it so much, but thank you. I truly mean it. Frederick Douglass made a statement where he said that it's easier to build young men than it is to repair older men. And so what we are talking about today when we're dealing with the issues among our young men, particularly African-American men, Councilwoman Arrington touched on so many things, but the biggest thing that she left us with today is about hope and unity. And the only way that we are able to build anything that's going to last is to be able to, one, be unified, and to have a message of hope that encompasses everyone, that's about everyone having equal rights, everyone having equal justice, everyone having equal opportunity. And so hopefully you take that charge from us today as we go out and try to do better, not just for Erie, but for everyone around us. Thank you again so much for watching. Can't wait till the next episode of Women Who Work.